Honourable member, his time has expired.
Speaker.
I call the Honourable Peter Dunn.
Speaker, can I begin by acknowledging the flattery of the member who's just resumed his seat? But just as he was inaccurate on my weight, he was inaccurate on many other things in what he had to say. Mr. Speaker, I want to make it clear on behalf of United Future that we will be supporting this legislation because we think it is sensible, we think it is what New Zealand requires, and we think it is in the best interest of this country long term. During this debate, many things have been said, many epithets have been thrown around, many sobriquets issued. Most of them are utterly irrelevant and utterly erroneous and grossly overstate what is happening at the moment. We are not selling our heritage or our assets. We are selling a partial share float in 3% of the Crown's assets. 97% will remain in the control of New Zealanders, if that be the phrase that is so important. What is really critical here, Mr. Speaker, is how we ensure that these state trading companies that these members opposite are so proud of continue to work for the benefit of New Zealanders. And in a rapidly changing international and technological environment, when we want to get smart green technology in place, for example, it costs. It costs and it has to be paid for. Now, here are the options. They are very simple. If the government of the day wants to boost the growth of those companies, it has about three broad options open to it. It either borrows more to fund them, and we are in debt as it is and are seeking to reduce that level of debt. It allows then, as another option, the companies to raise charges to the public, and we've heard the bleats already about the fear of increased power prices, so that's clearly a no-go, or it raises taxes. They are the three options. And when you start to fiddle with the tax system, you set off a whole chain of other events that reduce New Zealanders' capacity to be part of a productive, growing economy. So the conundrum the government faces, the same government previously in office faced exactly the same conundrum and chose to do nothing. The conundrum is you either let things stagnate as they are, or you seek more innovative ways of boosting the capital base of these entities. And the mixed ownership model, which will allow the sale of a limited shareholding, a minority shareholding, is in my view a novel way to do that, provided there are adequate safeguards put in place. And those safeguards need to be a very clear statement, as contained in this legislation, that the Crown will always maintain 51% as a minimum control of these entities. So the argument about overseas shareholders or other shareholders coming in and having their way simply fails on the grounds that they will not have the majority, and that the majority shareholding, the Crown as the protector of the public interest, will always be in a position to protect that public interest. So the second point that gets overlooked in this debate when we talk about selling out to foreigners or to other dubious types in New Zealand who will take over is that the legislation makes it absolutely clear, at United Future's insistence, and I'm proud of this, that no entity, public or individual, or corporate or individual rather, can hold more than 10%. So the idea that somehow this is a wholesale sellout simply is not borne out by the facts. The challenge we then have to come back to is what is a respectable vision of the way in which we develop our power companies in the future. I'm hearing interjections to my right. I suspect they come from the Greens, who are always telling us, with some validity I might add, about the need to improve production technologies, to go to smarter, more efficient ways of energy uses. We're going to have to invest, Mr. Speaker, in those technologies, and that will cost. And the choice that a government has to make is where that investment comes from. I think, sir, that the opportunity for individual investment in a minority capacity, the opportunity for some smart investment, is one that a wise government would not throw up. And I notice, Mr. Speaker, that what is being proposed here is not a radical new solution. It's the solution that several mainstream Labor governments in other parts of the world, like the Blair government, like the Keating government in the 90s in Australia, even the Carr government in New South Wales, have long since adopted. It's the solution that the Labor Party themselves, as late as the end of 2010, was proposing when it was talking about mixed ownership models for the assets of state-owned enterprises. It's the solution that New Zealand First used to talk about, up to a maximum of 24.9%. So the reality is, all we are arguing about here is the numbers, 51 or 49 or 24.9. Everyone has been around the park on this issue. Everyone has advocated a version of this policy at some stage or another, and now, because it is being implemented and circumstances see some people on one side of the House and some on the other, those who used to advocate it now find they have to oppose it. Mr. Speaker, that is not in the public interest of New Zealand. And I want to make one strong final point. It is this. A lot of people have said in public commentary that because allegedly my vote is critical, it's actually no different from anyone else's vote, that I have to exercise moral courage or some sort of higher standard. Mr. Speaker, what is important in this, as in any other issue, is integrity. And what the public of New Zealand really do not like is politicians who say one thing before an election and do something else after it. And I invite every member of this House to look at every statement United Future made prior to the election, every statement made subsequently, and try and draw a difference between them, because there is no difference. What we said right throughout was we did not support the wholesale sale of assets. That's not on the agenda. We did support the limited sale in respect of the energy companies in Air New Zealand, provided there were controls in terms of the minimum Crown participation, the maximum individual participation. That is in the legislation. And then the same people who preach integrity have the gall to say to me, having achieved everything you said, goodbye to you, Mr. Cunliffe, you've already gone. Mr. Speaker, the people who preach with some gall that I should exercise integrity, in fact, Mr. Speaker, I have done that, I will continue to do that, and that is why we're supporting this legislation.
Order. Point of order, the Honourable Damien O'Connor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I seek leave to table a document from the Salvation Army called The Growing Divide, which may point to the issues of integrity that members should read.
Is this in the public domain? Yes. Well, it will not be tabled and cannot seek leave. This is a split call between Mana and Labor.